Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Last year I spoke with a conference from Washington, and it's much better to be in Israel in person. Every time I come to Israel, I feel better and better, and it's wonderful to have this conference. My good friend Stanley Tritel has been asking me to come, and I promised this year to come, and I brought the good weather with me, I want you to know. If you've been to Washington or New York lately, you know we have snow, and more snow, and cold weather. This is just perfect. It's enough to make you want to make aliyah. I've been a member of Congress now for 22 years. I've been a longtime member of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on the Middle East. But since 2007, I've been chairman of the Subcommittee on the Western Hemisphere. Now, what I've done, the U.S.-Israel relationship is as important to me as anything else. Nothing is more important. I think that the United States and Israel have so much in common and need to continue to be strong and lasting allies. I always say, you know, presidents come and go, prime ministers come and go, even members of the Knesset and Congress come and go, although I don't want to go so quickly. But the U.S.-Israel relationship has to remain strong. So I commend you for attending this conference. This is one of the things that helps the relationship flourish and remain strong. Several years ago, I was the author of the Syria Accountability Act to slap sanctions on Syria for the first time. We have to keep monitoring it and making sure that those sanctions aren't being weakened. But it's important for the world to understand, as President Obama said in Cairo, and I think the best sentence out of his whole speech was the bond between the United States and Israel is unbreakable. He used that word, and it shall always remain so. Whatever the mullahs think in Iran, whatever the Revolutionary Guards think in Iran, no one should ever think that the United States is not going to stand squarely by the only democracy in the Middle East, the State of Israel. Now, if you look at Iran and you look to see what they have done in the Western Hemisphere, they are trying to make inroads every which way. I've tried as chairman to connect with the Jewish communities in all the different countries in Latin America. Last month I was in Buenos Aires meeting with the AMIA, the Jewish community there. We all know, of course, that the first terrorist attacks in the Western Hemisphere came in Buenos Aires with the bombing of the Israeli embassy and the bombing of the Jewish Community Center, AMIA Jewish Community Center, and we now know there was Iranian complicity in that, and even complicity is not even the right word, that the Iranians plotted this terrorist attack and carried it out. The main problem and the main facilitator in Latin America of the Iranians is Hugo Chavez of Venezuela. My subcommittee has held hearings everywhere you go. Chavez's fingerprints are there. There is a flight going back and forth from Iran to Venezuela every week. We don't know who's on there. We don't know who's boarding, but we do know that whatever's going on is up to no good. And we keep hearing all these different rumors about terrorist funding, as some of my colleagues here have mentioned. Iran is the biggest funder of terrorism, not only against Israel, but against the United States and every other place in the world. They are the biggest backer financially of terrorism across the world. In Caracas, I'm sure you know, there have been anti-Semitic raids. First of all, there was the raid on the La Hebraica Jewish social club in Caracas, supposedly looking for weapons and explosives. A Jewish day school was attacked by the police in Venezuela, supposedly looking for explosives in a school. It's absurd. And then in January of last year, just about a year ago, there was a vicious attack on a Caracas synagogue, which left the community in fear. And it came right after Chavez expelled the Israeli ambassador, supposedly in connection with the war in Gaza. The rhetoric that Chavez has used was to show that the small Jewish community in Venezuela was different from the rest of Venezuelan citizens, asking them to denounce Israel for the Gaza incursion, and as far as I was concerned, showing that Jewish citizens of Venezuela were somehow lesser citizens than other citizens of Venezuela. While today things have eased a little bit, people are leaving, Jewish people in Venezuela in droves. The community was 25,000, dwindled to about half of it. And you have to ask, why has Chavez gone after the Jewish community in Venezuela? And most observers believe that his campaign against the Jewish community in Israel is really a surrogate for his anger at the United States. We remember Abba Eban's famous statement that the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Chavez never misses an opportunity to attack the United States, and more recently, his ire towards the U.S. is being expressed through expanding relationships with our enemies, and that's where I come to the subject of today, and that's, of course, Iran. Why is that happening? Is Iran just looking for increased trade, or is Iran looking to do much worse? Every day we hear about increased expansion, not only diplomatic recognition, but also increasing the size of Iranian embassies in places like Caracas. The government of Argentina has condemned Iran's selection of the notorious Ahmad Vahidi, who recently became Iran's defense minister. He was directly involved in the bombings of the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires and of the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires. And so when you look at what Iran has done, their role in the hemisphere is anything but well-meaning. And again, it brings me back to Venezuela. When President Obama went to the Summit of the Americas in April, and I was there, he shook hands with Chavez, and our countries have restored their ambassadors. But there are a few other positive things to report. President Chavez traveled to Iran and Syria last fall and alleged from Damascus that Israel had committed a genocide on the Palestinians. It was obviously a vile attack. I immediately issued a statement condemning these offensive and absurd remarks, and 20 members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, bipartisan. You know, things in Washington aren't done very bipartisan these days, as you know, but 11 Democrats and 9 Republicans, all from the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee, signed my letter stinging the Venezuelan leadership for what they've done to intimidate the Jews in Venezuela. We're told that it had a profound effect, and as I mentioned before, the relations have backed off a little bit in terms of going after the Jewish community in Caracas. Thank you. The director of National Intelligence, Dennis Blair, recently said that Venezuela, and this is a quote, is serving as a bridge to help Iran build relations with other Latin American countries. Chavez and Ahmadinejad are anything but friends of the U.S. and seek any opportunity to denounce the U.S. and Israel. But concerns about the Iran-Venezuela axis run much deeper than harsh rhetoric. A recent op-ed in the Wall Street Journal by former Manhattan District Attorney Bob Morgenthau raised serious questions about the expanded financial ties between the two countries, and the State Department report expressed serious concern about these weekly flights that I had mentioned before. Agreements were signed during Hugo Chavez's visit to Iran last fall. Venezuela supposedly is investing $760 million in Iran's South Pars gas project and provides 20,000 barrels per day of refined gasoline to Iran. And while it's anyone's guess as to whether these schemes will totally be implemented, they would violate the Iran Sanctions Act and the Iran Refined Petroleum Sanctions Act, which is passed in different forms in the House and Senate. Let me just say that in the House, a couple of months ago, we passed strong sanctions on Iran and any companies that do business with Iran. The Senate followed suit a few weeks ago, and we are hoping that the bills will be reconciled, because you know, in order to pass it in Congress, the bills have to be identical, and that President Obama will sign it. Iranian involvement in Latin America is going strong. In 2007, while in Brazil, I visited a city called Foz do Iguazu, or Iguazu Falls. It falls in the so-called tri-border region between Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay. It's known for lawlessness and reports of Islamic extremists and Hezbollah agents smuggling to finance their bases in Lebanon and elsewhere. And the U.S. is working with the governments of the bordering countries in the 3+1 agreement, where we're trying to halt the smuggling and the possibility of terrorism financing, and we are going to do it. I want to mention one other country, and that's Brazil. While I expect Bolivia and Venezuela to expand relations with Iran, I was very concerned about President Lula of Brazil's diplomatic outreach to Iran. Immediately after the summer's stolen Iranian election, President Lula said he was going, he saw nothing wrong with it and was going to Iran, and he did. I condemned it, and it was widely reported in many of the Brazilian papers. When Venezuela and Bolivia do this, it's something that I think we can all expect. But when a country like Brazil expands relations to Iran, it's something that we have to make sure that we talk about it. Ahmadinejad, who denies the Shoah and says that he's going to wipe Israel from the face of the map, I tell some of my European colleagues that if he thinks that he would only stop at Israel and not move on to Europe and some of these other countries, they've got another mistake coming. So we have to have the world understand that the Ahmadinejad regime, the mullahs, they don't only pose a threat to Israel, they pose a threat to the entire democratic world. And I was happy that Hillary Clinton, I read in today's paper, issued a statement saying that Iran was slipping more and more towards a military dictatorship with the Revolutionary Guards controlling more and more. It's very important we do that, and frankly I think it's very important that the United States show solidarity with the opposition in Iran. I think we can worry and fret over whether it's counterproductive and we're going to show that they're nothing but pawns of the West. I think those people need to hear that we appreciate their courage and what they do. So I'm going to end by saying that you can rest assured that policy in the United States. I was watching my colleague Evan Bayh before, and it's a pity that he announced yesterday he wasn't running for re-election. But I want to tell you, support for Israel in the United States is strong and it's bipartisan, and the understanding of the crisis and the threat that Iran provides is also strong and bipartisan. We know what the threats to Iran are here in the Middle East. We know what they are in South America and elsewhere, and I can tell you that the United States Congress and the Senate is working together. There is no real difference of opinion. The Iranians are a threat to world peace. They must never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. People talk about intervention. I always say that the only thing worse than an attack on Iran would be a nuclear-armed Iran. So we need to continue to work together, and again, it's a delight for me to be here at this conference. Thank you.